G'day, it's Dan here again, and we're going to continue working on our lists and increasing the automation and the way that these lists can stay in sync with other values that change across the character sheet. So we're going to be working on the weapons now, and so these weapons are ranged weapons, and we want to make sure that they stay in sync with the ref value and also the skill, the ranged weapon skill. So there's two different values for that, and we want to make sure that the weapons always get the correct value in there, and then we can use that value in a subsequent session to modify the rolls that they do for the attack rolls. So let's dive into it. We're looking at the character sheet at the moment, and this is actually a almost completed instance. So I added an extra row in here, and that's the target value. And we can see here from shotgun uses the handgun skill. If we go over to the abilities tab and we find the handgun skill, we've got a skill of 4 for handgun, but our skill base is 10, and the other 6 comes from the ref score. So reflex plus the particular skill adds up to 10, and we can see that that value is now on the character sheet. We've got one here, shoulder arms at 13. If I use the drop down here to choose a different weapon, these score values will change. Now let's go and have a look at the Ruleset Wizard and see how we did it. Alright, we're looking at the car sheet main, which is the tab on the character sheet, the front tab where we're doing this work today. And I've made a few cosmetic changes here to the character sheet. I've put some more labels on here, I've put some more backgrounds on here, but really for the moment we're going to dive into the weapons list. So the weapons list sits inside this frame. We can see we've got some labels here. So I've moved these across and expanded these a little bit, and I've added an extra column, and that's the for the skill for that, using that particular weapon. So we're really going to jump into the weapon detail, which is what is going to fill this weapon list. So when we go here and look at the weapon list, we can see that the class name for this is weapon detail. So let's go over here to weapon detail. This is the extra field I've added. Alright, so there's some code here, it's redundant. It's not actually being used. I'm going to clear that up right now. And our code is all running here on the drop down. So let's walk through the codes. Firstly, we have an onInit function, and that will execute the first time that this line entry is displayed. So we run onValueChanged. So what we're doing here in the onInit is actually executing this script. The script will also run when there's a value change, but we want it to run when the sheet is first initialized as well. So working our way down, we've got node win, which we've seen several times before. This is when we run it on the character sheet, it'll identify the character sheet, and running it on the skill, in this case a weapon skill, it will also identify that skill. The next one is our get path, and so we're converting the node win, which is a database, returns the path but in a database format. Now we want to just get it as a straight string path, and that's what this get path function will do. Next we're doing node list, and what we're doing here is we've got node win, which is pulling up where the weapons are. We're walking up the tree twice, so basically getting to the character sheet, and then we're getting a child, and the child is the skill ranged list. That list is here, ranged weapon skills. That's the list here, and what we're doing is starting to query this list. So we first pull down the list and we get all the values for that list. So let's quickly check our debug, and we can see here that we've got our list here, we've got node list. So It's the database node is Kashi ID 1 skill range list. And later on, we're going to query the children of that. And one of the children is handgun. Another one is archery, auto fire, heavy weapon, and we've got another one in there somewhere, shoulder arms as well. So after we get the path for that node list, then we're also wanting to grab from what we do in the next line is we grabbed the weapon skill that is used for this particular weapon. And that will be something like handguns or shoulder arms or archery or auto fire. So we want to grab that name, the name that's been selected from this drop-down list, and store it here in this value. The next thing we're going to do is a query where we're retrieving a number of keys and values, and we just use the variable names k for keys and v for values in here. And this time we're doing it from our node list, which is getting all the children entries of our skilled ranged list. When we look at the character sheet, we can see here that the children of the skilled ranged list are auto fire, archery, handgun, heavy weapons, and shoulder arms. So they're all the children that we returned by that query. And when we use the for, it's going to iterate through each one of those. So we iterate through, and the first record that it finds, we're going to then do a query on that. So if v, which is the value of the first record, get child skill name dot get value is equal to, and it's not an equal sign, it's two equals, which means we're not doing a calculation on it, we're just comparing. Then if that matches, we're then going to, just some debug here, declare a match, but we're also going to get the value of the skill base. So what we've got there is, if our particular skill is a heavy pistol, it uses the handgun skill. So when we search the skill range list, we're looking for one called handguns. And when we find that, we're then going to retrieve the skill base value from that. And the skill base we calculated earlier was the sum of the reflex skill and of the particular skill value or training. So that will return that particular value. And we're going to do that for each of the weapons. So if the first one's a handgun, it will go through and search for handgun, pull that out. If the second one's a handgun, it will go through the list again looking for handgun, find it, pull it back out. If the third one is a sniper rifle, it will look for shoulder arms. So what we're going to do then is find the skill base for that one. And we're going to do each of those in turn. When we find one, we're going to retrieve that value. Then we're going to find the path for each of those. And again, you can see there's a v.getPath. So that's getting the path of the value that that query result was in. So if it's iterating through all the different ranged weapon skills in that list, and what we're doing, and some of them, firstly we're finding the name to compare it to, then we're finding the skill base because we're going to use that in our weapons list, and then we're also just finding the path because we need to then add a handler. So remember, handlers monitor the database and they look for changes in the database, and when they see a change in the database, they then will run a script. So what we've done here is anytime we see a change to skill base in our skill path, we will, if there's any update to that, we will run on value changed, which is basically just this script again. So we'll just rerun the script if we see that target database node change. And then finally, we take that value that we've retrieved from the other skill list, and we're going to use it to update this list. It's going to update the value in this black field. So let's go and check that out in action. Okay, so we've got here, we'll change this to a shoulder arm, the shotgun. So we've got a shotgun, it's a shoulder arm, and it's retrieved the value of 13 for the skill. So I'd go back to the abilities tab, but I've also just made, for the moment, I've copied that list over to here, but I've kept the source the same. So it's actually looking at the same place in the database as the list is on the other tab. And here's another design junction point, which may or may not change. I'm thinking about pulling these two skill lists onto the front tab where we have our attacks. And there's a few reasons for that, but they'll be explained later on. So anyway, for the moment, if the shoulder arm skill changes, so at the moment that skill is 7, if I change that to 5, we'll see that both of these two skills here, target values, changed. Now if I change the reflex value from 6 to 7, these changed again. And so our 12 here is made up of 5 from the shoulder arm skill itself and 7 from reflex. We've got a 12 here, and both weapons that use the shoulder arm skill now have retrieved the 12 value. Our handgun value of 11 is made up of a handgun skill of 4 and a reflex value of 7. If we change a handgun skill here to 8, this value jumps to 15, and it jumps to 15 here as well. So the code for that is a little bit convoluted, but when you're doing this, you step through it one line at a time. So break down the functions that you're trying to do, put lots of debug in. You can see I've got a ton of debug commands writing output to the chat here, and you can see every line pretty much I've put a debug command underneath it, and that just helps me do a sanity check and know that the value that I'm expecting to see is actually there. And sometimes I'll think I've got it all right, and I'll delete all the debug commands, and then I'll put another line of code in here. It's not working as expected, and I'll go and write them all back in. So what I'm going to do next is clean up the debug commands. I'm going to publish the video, and I'll post the code here for this script. These two functions, they'll go in the description for the video as well. So don't feel daunted by the complexity of this or the apparent complexity. It's just one line at a time. Read the description, understand the linkages, look in the db.xml to understand the data layout, and keep plugging away at your own creations. Thanks very much.